Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Big news rocking the college football world. Clemson files a lawsuit. And does that mean the potential end of the ACC? Will Manis and Ralph Leary are going to join me on tonight's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. As we get ready to talk a little college football here on a Wednesday night. Hope you're doing fantastic. My name is Bryce Koon, host of the college football show here on the Crowded Booth and the Crowded Booth in general, as we get ready to talk about the ACC. Clemson, obviously, with the big news that they are not just that they're filing the lawsuit, but that this is kind of the second big brand and the second team, we should say, that's publicly proclaiming they won out. Behind the scenes, it's a mess. It's a mess. I bring in my friends Ralph Leary and Will Manis as we get ready for tonight's show. Ralph's had a tough one so far this evening, but he is going to, he's going to be all right. He's going to be all right. So we asked the question, as we have last week. We did this last Thursday. Let me finish this up, guys. But how you fellas doing on this fine evening?
I'm not answering. Just not answering. It's what? It's just
that's your answer.
Simple jobs seem to be so hard sometimes. That's all I have to say.
Oh no! Oh no! Why do this? Why do this, Bryce? Why would
Ralph, tell us, what's your favorite
waiter? I used to work for him. Go waiter. I mean, that's by far the best. By far the best. Publicly, everything. Just waiter. I used to work for them. They're terrific service.
How do you feel about DoorDash?
Leonardo will decide that in the next few minutes. That's all I gotta say.
Oh,
it will also decide if I stay on the show tonight. That's all I gotta say.
Look, it's going to be okay. All right, hey, let's talk about this though. College football, great conversations. Yeah, we know March Madness is going on, and
Thank
that's
you,
great.
Jonesy. Somebody needs to tell Bryce what's going on.
I don't care.
This is March.
Montana State's beating the crap out of Grambling, aren't they?
Nope, they're up by 2. 72-70, 40 seconds left.
I'm all about Big Sky basketball. So Montana State, who cares? They're going to each team's going to get slaughtered. Whoever wins this one. So let's talk about this though, guys. Let's kind of set the stage here. Clemson files a lawsuit against the ACC. Look, this was inevitable. Okay, this is something that was going to happen. It's something that was going to be a part of this next phase of college football that I think we all kind of agree is going to happen. Now, the reason this has happened is I don't want to say grant of rights because that's what the ACC has, but this new deal that the ESPN has made with the playoff extending. And, we went through, I guess, Will, what was it, last weekend or last Thursday? You and I talked about the breakdown of the money aspect of all these different things and how this could lay out. My take on this is the ACC is obviously second fiddle. Like that's not something that's surprising to anybody. The ACC is second fiddle in all of this. That's not a personal opinion or it is my opinion, but it's also something that we have shown you they don't value you over and over again. And the teams that the teams that feel like they have the brand value to do it, we're not going to spend 48 minutes talking about brand value. If you want to sit there and, you get angry and yell at the clouds about media market, that does not matter. That is an outdated concept here in 2024. It is not the same. It does not matter. It is brand value. And so Florida State obviously made it public with the help of obviously the push of not getting into the playoff. Clemson now steps forward, making this public proclamation. And I give it to you here, Will, first off. I don't think this is the last time we're going to see a team make a public proclamation. I don't think that it's I don't think this is it. I think there's more. And I don't think this is a situation that's just going to work itself out. I think that by the start of college football season 2024, we're going to have a better idea of what the future of this conference is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree. Clemson is not going to be the last. And I actually agree with David here. He comments his money is on Miami, UNC, then Virginia Tech will be the next three that follow. Yeah. I agree with those three right there, the big movers and shakers in the ACC. Yeah. Definitely Miami. Miami, ever since they've joined the ACC, it's kind of felt like a weird fit. They haven't been as successful across all sports. I don't think baseball's had some pretty good years. But not as successful as they were in the Big East. So it's just been kind of weird, even though they're right in the middle of the footprint. They're a big brand. The ACC needs them, but I mean, this is only going to get worse for the ACC before it gets.
Yeah, it is. I want to shout out my boy Rod. He quote tweet. He goes, "I want to win the lottery. That doesn't mean it's going to happen." There's a lot of people who don't think this is going to happen, and that's I understand, why the case of why it's not going to happen. I sit in the camp of I think it is going to happen. I think that the ACC and what these programs are trying to do, and what Clemson is trying to do, and what Florida State are trying to do. Ralph, we just talked about this before the show started.
It's schools, not just programs. The entire school has to lead.
Yes. What they're trying to do.
That is what they're massive. Doing, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Because they could move programs and have them in different conferences, but the entire school is trying to leave the conference.
I guess they don't have to do that. Notre Dame does it. They're independent in football, and they're in the ACC and everything else.
Right.
Which we're not going to talk about logical thoughts. Makes the best sense. Keep the non-revenue sports regional and make football independent and national, but that makes too much sense for people. Ralph, wanted to get to this with you because they're trying to do what USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington did. If you're not going to back us up, ACC, Jim Phillips, then we're going to negotiate on our behalf. And because that's kind of what happened to the Pac-12. They just kind of stopped. The negotiations just fell apart, and they kind of just stopped talking. Your thoughts on seeing now the second team come public? And like Will said, I don't think this is it.
Well, I think what one of the comments I said, it was Florida State said the reason of the college football playoff and them not getting in is not the reason why they filed this lawsuit. It was mostly because of just years past they've been wanting to leave for a long time, and you start to see the money build up of how much money they're going to have to fork out to leave, and you're talking about $530 million. It's not it's not chump. It's not chump. It's a lot of money. You're losing media rights and everything. Your media deals you have in the past and. It's building up, and you see Florida State and Clemson now are the top two ACC teams. They have been for the past few years, probably the top two brands in that conference, and they've hit it. And they're stacking together here, and who's to follow? I think the comment said that Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I mean, if Miami is ready to leave, they'll leave. This is not good for the ACC. This is like we're going to talk about later, but this is. This is not good for the ACC. This is going to be the end. This is going to ruin, this conference. And I know I say ruin is like there's teams that bank off this ACC about itself. They need this conference to stay alive. And there are some teams that can move around and be okay and settle down somewhere else. But there are teams that thrive off this conference.
I wanted to get to this last May. Let's go back nearly a year. Last May, ACC athletic directors kind of went into a conference room down in Florida at the coaches' meetings, and that's when this secession plan kind of started. You saw the programs such as Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech started to kind of get this thing into the works of what they wanted to do. Ralph steps away, so it's just you and I, Will. They wanted to do this, and so for me in this kind of camp of things, the teams that were surprised by that last May, you shouldn't be surprised now. Like the warnings have been there, and they've shown you, and we can get into specific teams, and I don't know if we should necessarily, but Clemson's whole deal here is, and I want to get back to Dr. Bob's comment because this is exactly what I think is going to happen. The same way antitrust laws are affecting NIL, this is the legislation or it's just legislation. It's the legislation that these programs and these schools are hoping will come into effect because it's saying, hey, essentially, the ACC is impeding our way of making and generating money. And the ACC in turn is saying, well, you signed it. I mean, that's literally been Jim Phillips, his response. Will you sign it? I'll say this. Right. I've never seen a more tone deaf commissioner. than Jim Phillips. Like it's nuts. It is crazy to me how you can just sit there and act like nothing's happening.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't understand him. I mean, you've got a guy right down the road from you, Greg Sankey, who's leading the charge. You can't just copy what he's doing. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, to Dr. Bob's comment, it depends on which side of the fence you're on. Do you think the antitrust laws are going to benefit the SEC and the Big Ten, or are they going to hurt them? And I'm just looking up, trying to figure out where members of Congress went to college. And
you could play
this
into
article from Forbes that I'm looking at, just some of the names that it mentions. The majority of them graduated from schools that are members of the SEC and the Big Ten. So if there's legislation, that would lead me to believe that it will favor the SEC and the Big Ten if any legislation were to be passed regarding college athletics and grant of rights and broadcast rights and things of that nature.
Well, and you talk about this, the antitrust laws, like in this document, I read over a little bit of it, that the lawsuit document, I should say. Nowhere does it say that Clemson has found a home or that they specifically said that they are leaving. That is something too, because you start to get kind of into, legal jargon there where you really can't say things that could be used against you and stuff like that. But that's what this is, though. They're pushing and they're pressing. And there's not been a legal test of a grant of rights until these two lawsuits. And I'll just sit here and say, man, we didn't think such and such was going to happen. We didn't think the Pac-12 would no longer be a thing here in 2024. Just because you are stuck into your college football traditions and you just sit there and say, well, it's not going to happen. What makes it? Because what is, and Dr. Bob mentioned this too, the competition. Like that's what you're concerned about, competition and exposure. And at some point, I'm not saying that in 2020, at ACC kickoff, we're going to say two teams announce they're leaving the conference. What I am saying though, is at some point that number is going, a great comment there, Josh Brown. At some point, that number is going to be manageable enough to where you can say it offsets the cost benefit analysis to where if we just pay that right now, it's going to be better for us in the end. Now, look, $500+ million, that's a lot of money. But that's why this legislation is to help potentially knock it down or just altogether just kind of bring it to a place where it's more manageable. I don't know if they're going to get rid of it completely. That would require some stuff, but who knows? Antitrust could bring that.
Well, I would think that Clemson and Florida State have that much money lying around that they could just spend on this if they wanted to. But the thing is, they don't want to because they've got other programs that they have to do, researches they have to fund, things like that, that they can't afford if they're going to pay just to get their undergraduate athletes to play in a different conference to make the school a little bit more money.
I do want to get to one of the next comments we have, but I did want to say this too about that. One more thing kind of specifically on this lawsuit. One of the things they are claiming in this is that the projected revenue gap over the next couple of years, it's $30 million per institution.
Wow. That's significant, but is it worth spending $500 and some odd million?
I'm sure there's more money that goes into that. Like there's more funds that they wouldn't be having this conversation. But dude, you talk about $30 million per institution per year. Yeah, I don't know what he ordered.
Ralph got Cracker Barrel, I think.
Oh, geez.
Got the whole Cracker Barrel menu.
They said, this is a quote in the document, as the revenue gap widens over the coming year, Clemson will continue to fall behind its peer institutions. Yeah, and my thing with this is why not be pissed off? Like, don't be pissed off at Clemson and Florida State. Be pissed off at the folks in that ACC office because they're not. Ralph said that a fat joke. They're not even trying to help you. Like, that's what's getting me is like, there's no type of renegotiation. And I'll tell you this, it gets to one of our comments. It's because ESPN holds all the power here. They just will renegotiated this new playoff deal. In 2028, they're going to be able to kind of take an opt-out year to relook at things. You mentioned maybe expand the playoff. I say expand the playoff. Also figure out who are the players at the table. Who are they? And there's a strong chance ACC's not powerful enough because you're not going to backfill with enough talent. Let's play the hypothetical. You're not going to backfill with enough talent to make up and be a power conference. You'll be
not
like
by
the
2028.
No,
not
you'll
by
be like the American
for sure. And I said it. I don't know if it was the last show or the show before. The ACC should be on their knees begging Clemson to stay because Clemson is the reason that they have it's 2 automatic qualifying spots in the 12-team playoff. Clemson's the reason for that because they're the only football program that's made the playoff. So, I mean, yeah, Clemson is really driving this. Clemson should be really, as far as staying with the ACC and the future of the ACC really lies in the hands of Clemson and Clemson football because they've had more success in this playoff era, it's just insane era that we've had the last 10, 15 years. They're the only one that's had success the whole time. Florida State, right at the very beginning of the playoff era, was there, but obviously they fell off. But yeah, Clemson has all the power.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, and we're going to get to some questions. I know we got some tech fans that want to kind of ask, and that's a good question, Tobias. I'm going to get to it here in a second. Also another kind of interesting point here with ESPN, which voids the contract, because that's something a lot of people want to know. What voids this contract? Let's think of it as assets. We're going to have a little economics lesson. In the ACC, you have a depreciating asset. That's what the ACC is in this new age college football. The SEC is continuing to grow. That's your moneymaker. That's your cash cow. If you see an opportunity, Will, to take the best of a depreciating asset, cut your losses if you're ESPN in 2028, and let's take the top brand value, let's take the top moneymakers and funnel them over to the SEC. I'm not saying that Florida State and Clemson are definitely coming to the SEC, but from a business perspective, that's what this looks like.
Yeah, ESPN.
Why would that not make sense? Why would that not make sense?
And ESPN will do it because it's been very public the last, how long? 8-10 years that ESPN is losing money, losing millions of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. So they've got to make money, and that's what they're in this business to do, and they will do it. They will. I think they will be out of this contract in 2028, and the playoff is going to change completely because again, they hold all the power.
Well, to me, this opens the door to a couple things: the fall of the ACC and the actual separation of a super league. That's what this opens the door to, because, and I'm going to give him credit. Go back to Yormark. We talked about this on Monday. Brett Yormark, I believe, the Big 12 commissioner. You got brand value. You did. Like, I know Jed Fish is no longer at Arizona, but they felt like they were kind of up and coming. Just got a text message from somebody. I mean, I don't even know. Oh, okay, I got it here. But all together here, let's just kind of talk about this. Brett Yormark added value when not Georgia Tech, but when the ACC went to go and make additions, guys, there were schools vehemently opposed to this, like did not want them in there. You had obviously SMU, Cal. They were not even supported by all 15, obviously, members. Notre Dame gets a vote there. Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina were the 3 schools opposed. NC State was one of those that was opposed. If these teams leave, if they make a push to leave, that also voids the conference because they have to have at least 15 members to satisfy the agreement per ESPN. Media rights deals make a difference. The ACC's is awful, and it's putting the conference on the brink of extinction. And like, I get the money conversation. I understand that. I don't want people to feel like we're not addressing the $530 million. Like, I understand that. But what I'm telling you is a lot of these people have a ton of money, and a lot of these people have enough foresight to see where this sport is going. And they're not in the dark, that they understand what's happening. I just don't see a scenario where programs, and let's just name the top ones we feel like, obviously Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, and you could throw maybe Virginia Tech into that category too. I don't see a scenario where they don't say, we might have to bite the bullet. Not in 2025, but maybe 2028. Also, by the way, they have us on the CW. Exactly. It's a joke. Absolute joke.
Let's throw this all you need to know about the ACC.
It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
There's teams that play on better channels that shouldn't even be playing.
But again, just going back basic economics, that is a good move by the ACC to be on the CW because there's millions of households in the ACC footprint to get the CW on basic cable over the air. So you're going to get eyeballs on the CW, but not that many.
Yeah, but basic cable's not as popular as it was 10 to 15 years ago. And I understand. I mean, like, for example, like streaming wise, like I've got YouTube TV in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I can't watch the CW. I couldn't watch it. Yep. So what do you do? What do you do? Want to get this real quick before we kind of go into anything else. Mojo Productions, and this is a common defense mechanism against this idea. All it means that two schools are willing to burn money in a courtroom for the next decade. Grant of rights isn't going anywhere. How do we know that? And they're showing you that they push for legislation for the antitrust thing. I just think people need to be open to the idea. Acting like this isn't a big deal is what happened to Washington State and Oregon State. Like that acting like this isn't a big deal is what has happened to programs fall behind, and it's pretty on par. Like it's for me, when you really kind of see what people are talking about. I don't know. I think that the ACC is in some serious trouble here. They're obviously the sole rights holder of the ACC, sole rights holder of the SEC. One's a depreciating asset. The other one is one that's just a cash cow. It continues to grow. It continues to boom. And
I want to go.
Are they ever going to be willing to cut bases with that? Go ahead.
I just want to hit this question right here. Is there any way that the ACC can save themselves besides hitting Clemson with a hey, this is what the outlook is for the next few years, and hopefully bring them back in, or are they just like I said, it's just dead in the water? I mean, what's it going to look like in media days? Like how's that going to go? You think?
Well, first off, shout out. I want to pronounce his name. Najee, Sports Illustrated writer covering Georgia Tech, does a great job with his work. This is a really good question, and let's spend some time on this. How would it look like? Well, one, to actually have competent leadership in the ACC office, to have the forefront and the foresight to be able to say, hey, this is a problem, and we're not just going to keep saying, well, we think the legislation will hold up in court. No, because they're continuing to push it, and the public perception of what this conference is. Why would anyone who's of true value want to join? That is going to be the biggest. That's the biggest hurdle right now. So, Ralph, I know you had stepped away. Will and I mentioned this. You're not going to backfill losing hypothetically a Florida State and a Clemson with any, and that's not a disrespect to the programs that you could bring in. It's just you could not
bring in
you couldn't do
teams to even get close to it.
How dare you talk bad about Troy like that? How dare you?
I don't think Troy wants to touch the ACC. Okay, I want to hear it.
You know why? Because the daggum Sun Belt has a great TV deal. Mm-hmm. It's everything's on ESPN Plus. And they occasionally get an ESPNU, ESPN2 game. Even the MAC has that.
But it's when the conference play starts, it's once a week. There's an ESPN2 or ESPNU or ESPN game on Wednesday or Thursday night, and they kill it. It's because it's only one of two games that are broadcasted nationally on Wednesday night, and it's either you watch Toledo or not Toledo, Miami, Ohio, and whoever, or you watch App State play Coastal on a Wednesday night, and it's a great matchup. It's one of those things. That's why the Sun Belt is such a good with their media rights. I think that's terrific with ESPN Plus because when I was down there, when they go play at ULM, Troy traveled pretty well when I was in college. They didn't travel to ULM. That was a little too far for.
Why would you?
Well, I mean, South was a great travel. That's only 2.5 hours south, and then App State wasn't that bad.
I'm saying to ULM.
I'm just saying, but it's hard to get people to watch a game if Bryce, you've watched a lot of these games, and I know Will's watched a lot of these games of these smaller schools ESPN Plus games. It's hard to watch a game. There's no one there because you're like I'm probably one of maybe 150 people watching this game on ESPN Plus.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can tell you this, having spent time at an FCS school, I was able to see some of the numbers. At a place like Mercer, which is, the SoCon is a perfect example. They did well. SoCon numbers did really well. numbers wise, not only in people in attendance, but also just from ESPN Plus is one of the best things to happen to mid majors in basketball and Group of Five and FCS schools. It is phenomenal. That to say, back to Najee's question here, I genuinely don't know. Like I do not know how you rebuild the image here unless leadership in the ACC offices is able to turn around and say, you know what, we're going to fight for this. And I just haven't got the feeling. It's more of like, well, you signed it. And that's just not a good look because what's the end game? Let's paint the picture. Well, then it's just a ticking time bomb. Yes. Yes, the ACC has said back essentially, we believe that let me get this correct.
They'll do the right
thing. No. This is in a statement made on yesterday. Okay. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and their Board of Directors Chair Jim Ryan maintained their belief that the courts will uphold agreement between the conference and its members. Clemson, along with all ACC members, Tuesday. Special teams, special players, special plays. Clemson, along with all ACC members, voluntarily signed and re-signed the 2013 and 2016 grant of rights, which is binding through 2036. In addition, Clemson agreed to the process and procedures for withdrawal. The conference's legal counsel will vigorously enforce the agreement and bylaws in the best interests of the ACC and current members. What does that tell you? Hey, they signed it. They understood what they were signing. That's not goodwill towards your customers. That's not goodwill towards your business partners. So the end game here is either they're going to get out now or in 2036, this conference is going to be completely gone. I think the conference is gone in 2036 to begin with. Like, because of how you've treated this, maybe all conferences. I don't know. I know we kind of got off on a tangent there. Let's get to a couple more questions here before we kind of move on to the next.
You want to talk about that one for just a little bit.
So. The only way that it's going to work is the ACC could be better off just letting Clemson and FSU go, not even fighting it. And like you said, get better leadership, have a leadership change. And then the schools that are left, they're going to have to get real serious about football because it's the big moneymaker real fast. You're going to need SMU. You're going to need NC State. You're going to need Georgia Tech to keep elevating and be
Miami if they're staying.
Miami will probably follow FSU and Clemson when they finally do see the door. But the rest of the football programs are going to have to get a lot better, very quickly, and build up the brand of the conference.
So could you now? I'm just hypothetically here. Could you add since they were kind of out there by themselves, like Oregon State and Washington State, bringing them into the ACC? I know there's way out there, but we got Stanford already in the conference and Cal. Just throw them in. I mean, and that's not comparing to Clemson and Miami, but they're decent teams enough to compete enough to help out a little bit.
I mean,
is that just so far fetched? It's not even possible.
I don't think it's far fetched. I think regionality's gone. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
The SEC maintains the most regionality. We're comfortable saying that out of the Power Four. Big 12 is actually not bad, actually. UCF and West Virginia are weird, and Cincinnati.
I wouldn't even say UCF is really that bad, honestly. I think West Virginia is the wild one, the wild card there.
They're both pretty bad, and Cincinnati.
I mean, guys, the end game here is the ACC. I mean, this is my personal opinion. This is what I think that happens. I think the powers leave. They find a way, whether, people say they're just going to fight in court. No, I mean, they're either going to enact some type of antitrust law to where it impedes them being able to do what they need to do to keep up, which is against the law. You can't do that. That's illegal. And that's what's they're going to invoke, that is either going to tear down the grant of rights altogether, or it's going to bring it more down. It's going to bring it down to a more manageable buyout. And then I think at that point, your powers are going to leave, and your rest of your middle of the road programs are going to be left to make up a Group of 5 conference that is going to become a Group of 6. And that's not even an indictment anymore, because we all know that the power conferences is going to be SEC and Big 10. And then Big 12, to me, I'll just say this, Big 12 solidly the third in terms of conference health. And we're not talking about competition on the field. This is strictly conference health and stuff like that. Solidly the third best. That's what I think happens. There's a ton of questions. The ACC, and Ralph, we mentioned this when you stepped away, this opens the door for a Super League. It opens the door for the end of the ACC, and it's a depreciating product. It's going to off because once those teams leave, guys, and this is harsh for hard people to hear. Once they leave, how does it not become? How does it not become what the American has become? And I know we love the American, but it's just a bunch of solid teams. It's not really. There's no brand that's like, oh, that's them. That because that's what the Big 12 was for a little bit, and they've gotten a little bit better. But like, it's just going to be a bunch of teams that like, oh yeah, they could win 7 to 8, 9 games.
Well, I mean, the Big 12 obviously lose their top two, hands down. I mean, that's just how it happened to them. But I think they did a great job of bringing in a lot of good schools and a lot of good programs that can help out with everything they got going on. I think the Big 12, like you said, is a solid 3. I mean, they are easily the third best.
Yeah,
because obviously what the Big 10 and the SEC did is unmatched. Now, the ACC tried to compete with bringing in Stanford, Cal, and SMU. SMU being the home run hitter with that. The Stanford and Cal one just kind of
golf's going to be unbelievable.
Now, I'll say this. I saw there's a comment there that said we should go get West Virginia. It doesn't work like that. It's not free agency. You can't just go grab a school and bring them over. West Virginia is not going to lead the Big 12 for the ACC.
Also, Virginia and Virginia Tech might not allow it.
No, and it's still it's another thing. I was reading a comment earlier about the Clemson. Would South Carolina try to veto that? And it's just, I was just reading comments under, and I'm just, there's a lot of things that go into play when these schools leave conferences and go looking for a new one. There's a lot of things that go into play. Like West Virginia is not leaving the Big 12 to go ACC. Like I said, Oregon State and Washington State, like I threw those out there, but would Stanford and Cal be like, no, we don't want to play them anymore.
I'll also add to this the idea, and this is just an idea. I don't know that I would have to really research this. The thought process that Clemson will never be allowed in the SEC because South Carolina would veto it. Florida State would never be allowed in the SEC because Florida would veto it. Same thing for Miami. Georgia Tech, and that's one of the big things. I don't know if you guys know the history. Georgia Tech wanted to get back in. The SEC schools hated them because of some reason or whatever. Because they left. And Bobby, whatever. Bobby Dodd, all this stuff. I think in my opinion, and I'd have to be able to really kind of vet it out, I'd have to do some research. I think that's kind of outdated because I think we're in an era of where the media companies hold the most power. So you're an extent of like, let's just play the hypothetical. South Carolina, you don't want to get on board. You're going to feel the pressure from the other member institutions.
Yeah. Didn't Texas A&M stomp their feet and pout about Texas coming? And what was the vote? Wasn't it 13-1 or 12-2? I think Arkansas may have voted no, or Missouri may have voted no.
It was Arkansas, I'm pretty sure.
But it still happened.
Right.
And
I think reading comments under the these posts and everything, and I saw that was one of them. And one of the first things I know that was a big thing with the SEC with Texas and Oklahoma, which obviously didn't matter because the SEC was probably like sweating trying to get them to come into the conference because they wanted it bad. They wanted all that money to come in. But yeah, like you said, I kind of agree with that though, Bryce. With the veto, it's just got dated. It's been such a long time since a veto's actually kind of gone through that actually might mean anything. I can't even remember the last time a school that moved conferences that was denied because of a veto. I can't remember the last one, honestly.
Tom Fernelli of CBS.
I don't think it's going to matter.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I don't think it's going to matter. And to be honest, because the SEC has better leadership, when they sit down with their member school and say, this is the money we make now, and this will be the money we make if we let Clemson and Florida State in, Florida won't complain. South Carolina won't complain. Tennessee, nobody's going to complain because of the significant jump in dollar amount. It's going to be worth having your big rival in the same conference.
It definitely adds a lot more, in terms, with money, obviously. But yeah, and today I think and I see a comment where South Carolina said we would not do that. It's speaking as a Gamecock fan. I mean, there's probably a lot of fans who probably wouldn't want it to happen because let's say South Carolina's on one of their best years ever, looking for a chance to play in an SEC championship game and then got beat by Clemson. You're like, well, that just ruined our season because Clemson beat us in the conference play. I'm just saying that's like hypothetical. But there's fans out there who probably don't want to see these teams join. There's the old heads who are like, why can't we go back to when we had Sewanee in the SEC? Stuff like that.
I got this. This might rub people the wrong way. I think one of the biggest issues here is you have a conference of people who are just unserious. Like that's what this is, bottom line. At FSU and Clemson, the fear of not being able to compete financially against the SEC, the Big Ten, that's real, and it bothers them. I don't think that's a problem for a lot of the member institutions in the ACC. I think they're perfectly fine. Like, I got a comment on Twitter. It's not showing up here, but it was in the Twitter thing. It was our good friend from a Pitt fan. He goes, "What about Pitt?" And my answer to that is, what do you mean? Like, Pitt's just going to keep doing what they're doing. Yeah, they don't compete nationally already. Like, that's the cold hard truth. 10 of these programs don't compete nationally already. No, but like a lot of these programs don't compete already nationally, so there's going to be no difference for them. Now, for the fan bases, they're going to be ticked off, and I get that. That's a whole different thing. But they don't do it already. They don't pour money into the program like that already. They don't invest into facilities, invest into NIL, invest into their coaching staffs, in terms of having one of these, long litany of analysts. They don't do that already. It's not going to change anything. So what do I think happens? I think if the top 3 or 4 ACC schools do leave, and ESPN, when they get that option, that they turn around, when they turn around and they say they don't exercise the option on this contract, it's going to be the 7 to 9 ACC programs plus, maybe the Tulanes of the world, a program that, deserves maybe a better footing, the Memphis, something like that, USF. I just think that we're talking about a conference, and fans get riled up about it because we can go compete for national. Well, you don't. You don't compete nationally in anything, both financially and on the football field, and that's what matters to these people. It's not media market; it's the brand value, which is made up of those two things. And so, that's why we are where we are, because you have 2 or 3 schools that take it seriously, and the other ones don't.
Yep. And I'm not going to say to Georgia Tech or these other ACC programs that you can't compete for a national championship. You're just not. And you haven't for a very long time. Outside of Clemson, Florida State, Miami, you haven't seriously competed for a national championship in a very long time.
I believe since 2010, there is 2 ACC champions outside of Clemson and Florida State. And I believe it is Virginia Tech and Pitt. I think those are the 2 since 2010.
I will fact check that just in case.
There's no, and like, I'm not sitting there. I'm not trying to point that as like, oh, they don't do anything. But what we're just talking about here is it's not a conference that competes nationally or is nationally relevant in football. They don't. They're not at the forefront of the conversation when it comes to this. And I'll say this too: the argument that, well, the top 20 or 30 teams are only going to compete. Well, they do that already. That, like, a lot of this stuff is not. You're not going to notice a real change within what happens. Like, I would even beg to say, I'll say this, and this is not going to make people happy. I don't think you'll see a change in the day-to-day of how Georgia Tech operates their football program if this were to happen. I just don't think you do.
Ralph, I saw you smile. Were you reading the comments, or did Bryce say the wrong tech? Because I think he said the wrong tech.
No, he has the right tech.
Okay.
You go back one more year, is the other tech, though.
2009. I was going to say
it's vacated.
I had one around
there. It is vacated. But it's right. 2010. It's Virginia Tech, Clemson, Florida State, Clemson, Pitt, Clemson, Florida State.
I've got a question here. How many in the SEC compete nationally? Alabama, Georgia. That's about it. Big Ten,
Texas,
Ohio State. Now,
Oklahoma,
okay, so we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, Ralph just listed out, like, it's not just on the football field, guys. LSU could go 7-5 next year, and they're still a player for the top recruits in the country. They still demand TV time. That's just what it is. Why do you think Texas is still how, well thought of after the many years they've been down? People aren't talking about, well, the rise of Virginia again. No, they've been talking about, is Texas back for the past 15 years?
We've heard Texas back every year. They win one big game. You go back to when who was that? Who was the quarterback that beat Notre Dame? Was it Notre Dame they beat at home?
Ellinger. No,
it was before him.
Oh,
it was. Oh, I can't remember his name.
I don't
But he had
remember.
that.
It was Charlie Strong.
It was Charlie Strong, the head coach. He ran over the guy in the end zone to win the game.
Sam Ellinger.
And it wasn't Sam Ellinger. It was before.
That was against Georgia. Dr. Bob's got it.
Tyrone
Swoops.
Yeah.
Okay.
He ran over the defender, scored a touchdown, and when he got to the mic, he said, "Texas is back," and they went on to win like 3 more games. But every year, if Texas wins one big game nationally, is Texas back? It doesn't matter if they go 7-5 every year.
And what does that show you? Brand value. Why is Ralph? Will you? I'm going to let you take the reins on this. Auburn is on the verge of potentially having a losing record for 3 straight seasons. In 2025, let's just play the hypothetical game. Say they go 5-7, 6-6. It does not matter. The stadium's going to be packed out. The fans are going to buy tickets, and the value of Auburn football is going to be higher than that of a Georgia Tech team that goes 9-3. It just
the only way it won't. I'll tell you the only way it won't is if Auburn does have 3 losing seasons in a row. They keep Hugh Freeze, and he is very obviously a lame duck head coach, and they don't fire him midseason. Because the last guy, Brian Harsin, was the first Auburn head coach ever fired midseason. Gene Chizik went 3-9, and he finished out the season.
But the brand value, the attractiveness of that job will always be
Brian
at that
Harsin
level.
got fired, and Cadillac was a head coach. I know Cadillac, Auburn legend, great running back. Everybody loves Cadillac.
A&M game,
but that Auburn A&M game was a sellout crowd for 2 at the time 4-6 teams, and it was
the most exciting game though.
Crowd.
That game was
brand
so
value.
much fun. I was there. It was fun.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Let's get to that question. I know we got rambling on here. Let's get to that question right here. FSU Clemson. He says Louisville, NC State, UNC, Miami are going to get invites. Teams like Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Pitt need to sell themselves. Especially Georgia Tech, which I believe they can. J-Bat got it. I mean, maybe. Like, and he'll watch this later. Justin Klingel had a comment in our Discord. He said, "There's no way that Brent Key and J-Bat don't know what's going on." No, I don't think anyone's saying they don't know what's going on. Like, they know very well what's going on. The only thing that Brent Key can do at Georgia Tech, the only thing that these other coaches can do at other places, Manny Diaz at Duke, is win. Like, that's the only thing. I don't see a situation where Georgia Tech, it's going to take fundamental changes. I've talked about this, where they're ever going to have the money to be able to play with the big dogs. You're just going to have to win. Your on-the-field product is going to have to be so attractive that people can't look away. That's how you do that. It's win. It's win. Andrew K says, I don't think Louisville's a guaranteed invite. Guaranteed is a strong word here. What I do believe, though, there, Andrew, is that you're starting to see the interest drum up, especially with their I mean, just go look at the transfer class they put together, and it's interesting. And you're right. J-Bat is probably watching the crowded booth. He knows the score and knows Bryce is right. If he is. I don't know, guys. Is this the end of the ACC? I will say this. I don't think that we're going to see a team officially leave this summer. I don't see that happening. It could. Who knows? I'm not going to put a link cap on that. I just think that we're going to have a more clear view of what the future of this conference is. ACC kickoff's going to be wild.
If I was running the ACC, what I would try to do is, and this would fix the whole sport and be out in front of it, because you're already so far behind. If you try to get out in front of something and you fail, who really cares? Because you're already so far behind. Football should just be independent, and this should be across the whole landscape. All football programs independent, and your other sports, you keep them regional. Like Georgia Tech has a great baseball program. There's great investment in the baseball program. Really good program, have a lot of success, a lot of years, make the NCAA tournament most years. Lean into your other sports, because football, especially in the ACC, is not. There's 15 institutions, and for 13 of them, 12, 11 of them, football's not their thing. They're better at basketball, they're better at baseball, they're golf programs. Keep that regional and push that.
Yeah.
But again, it's the dollar sign. People want to watch college football, which I think that's going to be lost on the conferences anyway.
Is the ACC dead if one of these teams leaves? Yeah.
Yeah.
They are because you're not attractive to TV. If
so
one
leaves, 3 leaves. Let's be honest.
Yes,
Once
the first I'll say this: once that first domino falls, I mean, y'all remember how quickly the Pac-12 disintegrated.
Oh.
Once the first domino falls, it's going to happen real quickly. It's just a matter of time.
It started off with Oregon, USC, and Washington were the first 3 teams out there. And I think maybe UCLA was the first 3 teams or first 4 teams that said they were going to lead the Pac-12, and then the floodgates opened, and the Pac-12 was nothing.
It was within 2 or 3 months that the ones going to the Big 12 announced all together. Yeah. They announced, we're going to the Big 12.
It was like, Colorado and Arizona are all going to be the Big 12. Like, what happened to the Pac-12? It's just annihilated right there.
Here's an interesting kind of going back to Florida State. We know Florida State was the big, the first public domino to kind of make this thing happen. Clemson is the next one, and there's look, these teams. This is not impulsive decisions. Like these programs and these people have been able to really kind of dive into this over the past couple, year or two. This is what's crazy. Peter Collins, the chair of the board of trustees at Florida State. Okay. This is not football. This is chair of the board of trustees, academic world. He said publicly, if this were only $150 million we were talking about, we would have left already. Said that publicly. So let's just start there. We know that they would pay a baseline of 150. I'm telling you, I think if they get it to around 200, 250 million, they're out. I that's where I think if you can get it, if they get this buyout to $250 million, they're going to leave. And then once Florida State leaves, it's inevitable. Like once one team, like we said, once that first domino falls, it's inevitable.
The Big 12 is the only one that's done anything to say our 2 best left, and we still look pretty solid. Honestly, I mean,
we're going to add. We're going to be aggressive and add, and we're going to be number 1 of what's left, basically.
And those teams they added may not fill the gap of Texas, Oklahoma. They're doing a pretty darn good job of it, though. I mean, what they're going to bring in, and the rivalries they'll start with those. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean,
you get Colorado back in. You bring both Arizonas. That's big. BYU comes in, which regionally makes a ton of sense.
You got you added Houston on UCF last year, and then they weren't obviously the best teams, but they're going to get better. They're going to adapt to this conference and start to rise into their powers. And this is what they did a great job with this, and that's why they've succeeded so far with this so far.
You're right. Y'all are both right in that. And I'll say this. I think this is where the blame goes on Jim Phillips. I think he was naive. I've mentioned this moment multiple times on the show. I remember sitting in Charlotte at ACC kickoff when the news dropped of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. And you could just get the feeling, and the questions were asked Jim Phillips, it was just naive. And what we've realized is that these other commissioners, Big Ten, SEC, and a little bit of the Big 12, you're out for blood. They're hunting big game. And he kind of waited too long, I think. And I think that's what ultimately is going to doom the ACC altogether. And I will add this. We've talked a lot of doom and gloom. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Will, Ralph, if you wouldn't mind, make a banner and just we'll put on there, we'll say what's next? What's next for the ACC teams? Or what's next for the ACC leftover teams?
I would love to get to this comment. I don't know if you saw it. Scott Gaines, great comment. What happens if the courts side with the ACC?
Oh, sorry about
that. That is, we're both clicking at the same time. That is probably the best question of the night.
That is a great question.
Who knows what happens? You're probably going to see countersue. You're going to see Clemson appeal and go all the way up. Just keep going up. Yeah, Miami will probably join the lawsuit. Florida State will probably jump on that lawsuit, and they'll just keep appealing it all the way up until they get the answer they want, is what I think.
They'll spend all that money to do it too, and then once they get what they want, they're bouncing.
Yeah,
it's the truth. I mean,
it'll go up to the Supreme Court.
No, I mean, and someone put it earlier, are they really okay with spending all that money in court? Absolutely. To get what they want, they will.
Absolutely.
These programs are tired of dealing with this stuff every year. If they want to leave, they want to leave. This is not like we're thinking of leaving. No, they want out. They want to go.
These have already been well thought out plans. Like this is not, like I said, something that's just off the cuff.
We're sitting at dinner talking about with the other programs and just say, just random thoughts and then make it public. No, they've been talking about this for. I mean, Florida State's been talking about this for what? I mean, honestly, I think publicly we've heard it for 4 years. I feel like.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I may be a little off on that, but for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been more vocal from Florida State saying they want to leave.
But it is a good question, Scott. That's. I mean, we're sitting here acting as if it wouldn't, be, and so that's a good question. Obviously, it's going to be tons of time in court, which the ACC doesn't want to do that. Like I know we had a comment earlier, and thanks everyone's firing off comments. I can't find it, but mention of like it's a bad look at the end of the day. The ACC's done with to begin with. Like that. Like let's just get that out of the way. Whether it's now or 2036, it's over. So like you don't want to spend the next 12 years just fighting. Now here's the kicker, Ralph. You can throw up that next banner if you've got it. What's next? So here's an idea. It just kind of hit me, and I wanted to talk about this with you guys. Here's a potential idea. Wild times. 160 people watching live. We appreciate you on Twitter. We appreciate you on YouTube as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. The ACC could get creative. Now, I don't know if they got the forefront to do this, but here's my pitch. If this does happen, let's just say the average buyout is $300 million. Okay, let's just play that number. If the buyout's $300 million, you lose 4 teams. That's $1.2 billion, right?
Yep,
that's right.
I fell out of college. I can't do math.
Well, hear me out here. Your teams that are remaining, you could disperse that money between those teams to keep them in the fold. You're talking about a nice chunk of change that could be dispersed to them. So if you want cash infusion back into the conference, that would be the best way to do it. Look, you kind of get into, I don't know how much you guys have economics people in here, but you kind of get into the time value of money. $1.2 billion, man, you could keep the conference afloat for a pretty decent amount of time, because it's not going to be a viable asset to a TV deal.
Hey, you can spend that $1.2 million and get Florida Atlantic in the ACC to replace Florida State in Miami.
USF.
Saying.
USF would be a solid addition to the ACC.
All right, let's get to a couple of these questions here.
I keep seeing Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not joining the conference. They're laughing at all this.
Not the ACC for sure.
Dr. Baum, time value of money. We're getting educational, not political. We're getting educational. All right, let's get to rambling. This is a great comment here. A great question. Who do y'all think are the last teams in the ACC to go with a conference? Do y'all think there's a chance that anyone doesn't make it into the SEC, Big 10, or Big 12?
Yes.
Do you think there's a chance that anyone does not make it?
Yeah.
Yes. How many are there? 15?
Pitt.
I think there's
17,
14.
17 right now.
17. So I think that would make 14 that wouldn't make it in the SEC Big 10. No.
13
that wouldn't make it, because SMU would go right into the Big 12.
Yeah.
I was going with Florida State. I'm going Florida State.
Yeah,
Clemson,
Florida State, Clemson,
Miami, and North Carolina. Those are mine.
Yeah.
Yep, forgot about North Carolina.
I'll have
and Duke. Okay, Duke would probably get in for basketball and baseball.
And if Manny Diaz wins there respectably,
yep.
Like if he wins 7 to 9 games, that's
maybe there's 10 that wouldn't make it into the
the teams that won't make
hypothetical
it.
Power 3.
Pitt's not going anywhere. They're not making anything.
Wake Forest is not going anywhere. They got like 10 fans.
Boston College decided to end their football program this winter. They're not going anywhere.
Billy O, baby.
Syracuse basketball will go back to the Big East.
Bring it, baby.
I don't know
Bring
about
the Big East back in football. That's what we need.
Like, get West Virginia back up there. That was some of the best times, dude. Pat White, quarterback, absolutely.
I'm Twitter searching stuff about like
Jonesy,
where would SEC.
Manny Diaz is going to win best hair. He ain't winning.
Well,
football.
He would have if Gundy went and shaved his mullet.
True. But it's a good question. I mean, I think that's just that's kind of our opinion.
The lower tier teams every year.
This is the thing. The not even like outside of the top 5. What's the value? Like, what is the value of the top 5 in a TV contract? And the argument that Vanderbilt doesn't offer value, that's mute. They're already in,
the conference GPA at a solid 2.5,
and they're good at baseball.
Yeah, they also have the best baseball program.
Yeah, they're one of the best.
Will found out the hard way.
I did find out the hard way. Felt
yeah, I
pretty
mean,
good
I'm cool with
being
this.
the number 16 team in the country, and then go to Nashville and get swept.
There's a lot of money at Duke. You guys have no idea how little that school is. I'm sure. I don't want to discount Duke, and I'm glad Will you mentioned that because that is definitely true. Ramblin says, to be honest, if I was GT, I would look at Big 12 right now. I could see GT competing for Big 12 titles with teams like OK State, UCF, Iowa State. Build up a Big 12 resume and join Big 10 when ready. Big 12 would be interesting.
I know everybody already says I'm a Georgia Tech hater, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Georgia Tech, Wake Forest.
I forgot Kansas State for one.
Who else? NC State probably will be in this group too. If the ACC went away, those three, they're looking at the American probably at best. And that's just being totally honest, because like Wake Forest and Georgia Tech, they don't have the investment. No, they don't. Let's get to this really quick. Future value is an argument. Miami's just a better version of GT. I completely disagree. Miami has tons of money, and they actually utilize it for the football program. Hal Road, appreciate you watching, Hal. I appreciate you. Exactly. Tech will go big because of the AAU membership and academics. The AAU membership is not what you two guys think it is. It's part of an academic prestige thing that they have. I'm just going to go and tell you this right now. And this is about that's not. I was like, are we talking about like high school basketball? Like,
yeah. Well, let me tell you this right now. I don't know if you guys have realized this. They don't care about academics. No, buddy. They just let Caden Proctor and NCAA peace out after spring break and go back to Alabama. They don't care. They don't value education like we think they do, or like we'd like to think they do. It's not going to be enough. It's just not going to be enough. It doesn't. And that's not a knock on what GT is as an academic institute. It's not a knock on what Wake Forest is a really, really good school. It's just the fact.
I mean,
yeah, it's just
they don't have the investment.
They don't care.
Especially football, because that's the big moneymaker. They don't have the investment there. You just don't have what the SEC schools, the Big 10 schools, Big 12 schools even have.
I mean, just what you can offer.
Just don't have it. Until people start changing.
Yeah.
Until people start listening to John and giving their money every month, then things might change.
He
didn't give us his math tonight. I don't know what the math is.
Let's see. If GT was joined the Big 10, we would be Vandy 2.0. You can't tell me right now that Georgia Tech could not compete with every single Big 12 team in 2024. Half the ACC could. That's why Big 12 will fall too. Now, the Big 12 is not going to fall because they have a really good media rights deal. That's why not. Like, as long as that media rights deal is there. Now, maybe in the next edition of a media rights deal, that could happen. I see your point there, Zach. I just think that we're sitting in a situation of where I don't know. We're just sitting in a situation. Big 12 is has better health. Not talking about on the field. It's just
they're safer afloat than anyone else.
Let's see. All right.
Hey, and we're the number 1 seed, baby. We're one of the number 1 seeds.
Who's we?
Man said we.
We.
Where's Barry at? They make the tournament?
They did actually. No, they did.
D3.
Let's see. Who would Tech would be competitive with Baylor? I'd give them that. Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, West Virginia. So that would leave Texas Tech, Texas, TCU, not Texas. Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State,
Neil's losing the Tech. What's your
Iowa
deal,
State, and I think Tech would be competitive with BYU. So that's like the top half, and then talk about the teams going. Utah, no. Colorado, probably. Arizona.
Okay.
Can Arizona sustain it? We'll see. Arizona State,
Atlanta.
yes.
Hey, buddy, I can't wait for Colorado and Tech to play. That's going to be unbelievable. Next year, I believe, 2025.
Georgia Tech would be the bottom half of the Big 12.
Let's get to this right here because Tobias did ask this question. I asked you, said you get back to it. I apologize for that, Tobias. All hope is just lost for Georgia Tech then? I don't think it is. I'm not going to say all hope is lost. That's really bleak. I just think it's not going to be you're just not going to be able to compete financially until you start winning. That's been shown. Like, I'm just going to tell you this: people are not going. Georgia Tech donors are not going to put up their money unless you win. They're just not like that, and that's fine. Now, Georgia Tech has the opportunity to be into some really, really good money, but the apathy from the people who make a difference, it's settled in really deep. So you have to win. Like I said earlier, your product on the field has to be so undeniably good that people can't ignore it. That's the way. That's where you do it.
Or be Texas A&M, where they just fork out as much money as possible to try to be the best and still just be average.
But they don't have that money. That's the problem.
I said it earlier about the baseball program. Look at the upgrades that were just made to Georgia Tech's baseball field. Georgia Tech has money. They have alums. They have donors. They have the money to do things. Win on the field and you'll get it. The Tech baseball program has been the best for the last at least 5 years. Although I'm hating on my guy Josh Pastner. I forgot to watch him today. Forgot doing tournament coverage.
Do you have it by any chance nearby?
No, not nearby.
That was great.
Close by.
I wanted to get this because this is a good a good comment. He says, I would just as soon as stay in the ACC with the addition of the best we could get to fill the void. Yeah, I mean, I think that's your best path. And what about this? Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, whoever it is. What if you just dominate a new ACC? Like, that should be the goal. Like, if you're not going to pick, let's think of this, because we've seen rounds of conference realignment. Like, if you're that ACC team that gets left out, just dominate the new one. And it kind of goes into what I said. And I hope that was a good enough answer, Tobias, there, because from my vantage point, it's just, you're going to have to be so daggum good on the field that it's just going to, once that money will really start to kind of be poured in. Because, look, a lot of people make fun of Georgia Tech. And a lot of people make fun of these other programs. They've got money. They just don't have invested donors. And I mean in the sense of attention to detail, or people that – because, look, Georgia Tech people are super smart. The Tech stock is a tough one to buy into at times, and it has been. If Brent Key can change that, if other people can change those things, that's going to make a big difference. Until that, it's going to be – it's just going to be interesting.
Dr. Bob, I want to get to Dr. Bob real quick. Damon Stoudemire has got the basketball program headed in the right direction. I'll say this: I didn't watch a ton of Tech basketball this year, but Damon Stoudemire is a dog. I've seen enough.
Also, I don't know if they just brought in a really nasty recruiting class. They just got a couple commits.
He's a dog.
I like him.
He's a dog.
Meaning
he's got the dog in him, not a Georgia Bulldog, because I know where that's going to go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You dominate a new ACC and then you get an invite down the road. Exactly. I agree. There was a comment up here I wanted to get to. Andrew says, I'm worried about Stanford and SMU joining and making our financial commitment look even worse. Can't speak to Stanford. We know it's obviously a very affluent. I mean, tons of money, the potential there. There's a ton of money potential. Okay, like that. That's where we feel comfortable saying. Look, SMU has money, and I'm telling you, it's going to surprise people who are just kind of hating on it. Now, look, obviously we've taken a step further in how we feel about SMU, but in all truth and reality, people around the sport are going to tell you, hey, they can be a power player, not like a Georgia, Alabama, but they can be I don't know how far I want to go in saying that. That might be a whole episode of just how far we think SMU could go in college football. But they got a ton of money. They've really, really got a ton of money. And Dr. Bob says, they're even more loaded Duke. Hashtag not an ad, but Country's Barbecue. I'll see. You half chicken is the best.
It's Wednesday.
Pig tater.
But yes, if you're in Columbus, go to Country's, get the barbecue chicken.
No, actually go to Cook's Barbecue. Or Cook's, sorry. Cook's Hot Dogs.
They got some barbecue now. It's pretty solid.
They do. Not bad for a hot dog place.
Well, might as well run it.
Just run it. Run it one time for us. Run it one time.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Presenting sponsor of the show. Fantastic. Well done.
Run it, baby.
Hey, we might have to do a live show from Cook's in about a month. How you guys feel about that?
Need to. Back in the old, just like the old days.
Cooks, you can get hit by airplane taking off. I love that he
That's a
knows. I love that he knows.
Across the street at the where Max Fitness used to be, it's Furniture Queen or wherever it is now. I was taking my break on a Saturday in the parking lot.
I don't know where this
And
story's going.
Hey,
there's people lined up on the side of the road looking at the airport. I'm like, what is going on? And then Trump's airplane just takes off at full speed.
Oh God, you just got us canceled.
Good.
Okay, yeah, you just got us canceled.
Jonesy, this cup came from Macon Road Barbecue. I lived Macon Road Countries. I'm sorry, Macon Road Countries. I lived.
Dr.
Not
Bob,
speaking
I
to
feel
Dr.
like I
Bob.
just walked into a time warp back to 1985.
And that's what
No, Dr. Bob. No, Dr. Bob. 1955. Don't know how we got
Hey.
color video, but
Hey,
1955.
you walk in there, it's about 100 degrees in that first room, and it cools off in the next room.
Oh yeah,
I'll say that.
it's
Like stupid
yeah, this
midnight run.
is wild
Midnight
stuff.
Run. It's just
Oh, good times.
iconic.
All right, how any kind of final thoughts on this? ACC Dead? I think eventually yes. The hope is, I mean, we've kind of talked a lot about this. Any kind of final thoughts on these conversations?
Eventually.
No.
No.
Nope.
Well, hey,
I'm good. I've said all I need to say.
man, we really
Do you want me to address the question?
no. No, you're good.
I'll say this. I would rank Georgia Tech just real quick number 4 in 2024. Number 4. Number 4 in the ACC. I don't need to say anything else. Great pluck, Jonesy. Yes.
Hey,
If you're not in the
seriously though,
Discord, join the Discord.
seriously though, man, this is the last night to join our bracket challenge. I'm gonna once again put that link. Once again, I'm gonna put that link down there below. Also, to the folks watching on Twitter, man, we appreciate it. It has been a ton of fun to reach a new audience, reach a broader audience, and nearly 200 people watching again live tonight. That's look, it might seem like a low number to people out there, but hey, we're growing, and that is all we care about. Have a good conversation, and who knows, man, we might go live again tomorrow night. Might have to talk about this Caden Proctor stuff because it is. It's nuts, but hey, really good conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching on Twitter, this is what we want you to do. Head over, click the little profile, head over to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Completely free for you to do. It just helps us in the algorithm as we continue to build up what we have going on over here and helps us to provide the content that we do provide. Once again, we appreciate it. If you're listening after the fact, whether that's on radio, yeah, we're on radio. I don't know how they're letting us do it. WQEE in the Noonan area, all across. That's essentially in East Alabama and West Georgia, up there in that area. We appreciate them for partnering with us on that. And then also too, we mentioned Cook's Place, presenting sponsor of our college football show. They do a fantastic job. And guys, I am coming back to Columbus in April. Definitely. I didn't get Cook's last time around. We gotta make it happen. And who knows? You remember I bought that podcast setup. Like we just do a show. Like let's just do a show. Remember, I sent one to my old apartment in Columbus, so someone just got a nice like $400 podcast set up, just sitting in their room somewhere they didn't pay for. That's great.
You told me to just go up and take it.
I wish. But obviously the biggest thing here, time value of money. We're educational, not political. Ralph got a little political,
We may
but
not be
time
truly
value of money.
educational, but we're getting there.
I got a master's degree, so yeah. I don't know how. 2.7 GPA. Let's go, baby. Hey, we'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Coming on the Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.